If you have been taking B12 for months, maybe years, because of tingling in your feet or numbness in your hands, and you're still waiting for something to change, I need you to hear something most doctors simply do not take the time to explain. The supplement is not failing because your body is broken. It is failing because your body changed. And nobody updated the protocol. After 60, your stomach produces measurably less of a protein called intrinsic factor. Without it, your digestive system cannot extract synthetic B12 from a pill and carry it into your bloodstream, regardless of how high the doses. Add a proton pump inhibitor like omeprazole or metformin for blood sugar, and both of those medications directly interfere with how your gut handles B12 absorption. The problem compounds silently, but here is what changes everything. Even if your B12 levels were perfectly restored, that still would not be enough, because the real structure that is failing is the myelin sheath, the fatty insulating coating wrapped around every nerve in your body. When that coating degrades, your nerve signals begin to misfire. They short circuit that is the precise source of the burning, the tingling, the numbness that keeps you awake at night. Rebuilding that insulation requires a specific combination of healthy fats, antioxidants, and a full range of B vitamins working together. One isolated pill cannot carry that entire load. In the next 14 minutes, I am going to walk you through 5 whole foods that give your body the raw materials it needs to repair that nerve damage. What each one does, why it works, and exactly how to use it. The number one item is something most people walk right past at the grocery store every single week without ever connecting it to nerve health. That connection is going to surprise you. Before we go further, drop a comment right now. With your age and the country you are watching from, nerve repair looks meaningfully different at 62 than it does at 78. And what I am about to share applies with different urgency depending on where you are in that window. And if you have been dealing with nerve pain, tingling, or that sensation of walking on a crumpled sock even when your feet are bare, add the word nerves to your comment. I read everyone. Here is the scene that plays out in medical offices every single day. A 71-year-old comes in describing burning in both feet at night and numbness in the fingertips. The physician orders a B12 blood test. The result comes back within the standard reference range, perhaps 320 picograms per milliliter. The doctor sees it is not flagged low, checks a box, and moves on. The patient is told their levels are fine. What almost nobody asks is this: even if the B12 number clears the standard threshold, is that level sufficient to support myelin repair in a 71-year-old with reduced intrinsic factor and a digestive system absorbing nutrients less efficiently with each passing year? That is a different question, and most clinical visits are not long enough to ask it. The research on nutrient status and peripheral nerve function has been accumulating for years, but the translation from published evidence into everyday practice is slow. Patients continue to be told their labs are normal while their symptoms tell a different story. That gap between what the evidence shows and what happens in a 15-minute appointment is where the problem lives. If you value understanding the why behind the numbers, not just being handed a protocol, what I am about to explain will give you a completely different framework for thinking about nerve repair. Your nervous system at 70 is not simply an older version of itself at 40. 3 changes matter most. For what we are discussing, first, myelin composition shifts. Roughly 70% of the myelin sheath is made of fat, not protein, not vitamins, actual lipid material. Diets chronically low in the right types of fat leave the nervous system short of the raw material needed for structural repair. You cannot rebuild a fat-based structure without fat. It is like trying to patch a rubber seal with paint. Second, oxidative stress accelerates. Free radicals circulate constantly, and nerve tissue, particularly the myelin sheath, is among the most vulnerable structures because of its high fat content. As the body's natural antioxidant defenses decline with age, the rate of myelin degradation begins to outpace the rate of repair. The damage compounds quietly for years before symptoms become undeniable. Third, B vitamin absorption declines across the board. B1, B6, folate, and B12 all require adequate stomach acid and specific transport proteins. Those systems weaken with age. Diuretics for blood pressure flush water-soluble vitamins out faster than a typical diet can replace them. The result is a nervous system starved at multiple levels simultaneously. These are not minor inconveniences. These are fundamental shifts that demand a fundamentally different approach. And yet most guidance older adults receive has not been updated to account for them. Number 5 is ground flax seeds. And this starts with the fact most people who eat carefully have never been told. You watch your fat intake because you have been told for years that fat is the problem, not the solution. You take your supplements, and yet the tingling has not improved. Here's what those guidelines never mentioned. Approximately 70% of the myelin sheath is made of dietary fat. When your fat intake is consistently low or the type is wrong, your body lacks the construction material to rebuild that coating. The repair process does not stall because something is wrong with you. It stalls because the materials are not there. Flax seeds are one of the richest plant-based sources of alpha-linoleic acid, an omega-3 fatty acid that the body converts into forms the nervous system uses for myelin repair. A 2022 analysis published in Nutrients reviewing data from multiple controlled trials found that consistent omega-3 intake was associated with meaningful reductions in neuropathic pain scores and improvements in nerve conduction velocity in adults with peripheral neuropathy. Flax seeds are one of the most accessible ways to bring those omega-3s into the daily diet, particularly for people who do not eat fish regularly. Consider Margaret, 74, a retired librarian who had avoided dietary fat for nearly 20 years following guidance from her cardiologist. Her nerve symptoms had been worsening for 3 years. Her B12 was normal on paper. What her labs did not reflect was a nervous system running a structural fat deficit for 2 decades. Adding 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed to her morning yogurt was one of the first changes that actually shifted her symptom trajectory. Be completely honest right now. Have you been eating a low-fat diet for years while your nerve symptoms have been getting worse over the same period? Comment yes or no below. That pattern is more common than most people realize, and it tells you something important about what your nervous system may be missing. The fix: do not eat whole flax seeds. They pass through the gut largely intact and deliver almost no benefit. Use ground flaxseed, either purchased pre-ground or ground fresh from whole seeds, and keep it refrigerated 1 to 2 tablespoons daily in yogurt, a smoothie, or oatmeal. Food level amounts. That is where you start. Fat is only one part of this picture. Something else is actively working against you, and that is where the next item comes in. Number 4 is turmeric, but only when used in a specific way. And the reason that detail matters will make complete sense in a moment. You have probably tried turmeric, added it to warm water or a smoothie, and stopped because nothing changed. And that is an extremely common experience. And the reason is something the packaging never mentions. Chronic low-grade inflammation is one of the primary reasons nerve tissue stays damaged and continues to deteriorate. Think of it as a slow background fire burning through your nervous system. Because nerve tissue repairs itself more slowly than almost any other tissue in the body, it takes the heaviest damage when inflammation is persistent. Rebuilding myelin while that fire is still burning is like reconstructing a wall while someone keeps taking a hammer to the other side. Turmeric contains curcumin, which works directly on the inflammatory pathways that target nerve tissue. A 2017 review published in CNS and Neurological Disorders, drug targets found that curcumin demonstrated both anti-inflammatory and neuroprotective properties, with evidence supporting nerve regeneration rather than simply suppressing pain signals. That distinction matters enormously. The goal is repair underneath, not symptom masking on top. The problem is that curcumin on its own is extraordinarily difficult for the body to absorb. Piperine, the active compound in black pepper, changes that equation. Research published in Plantamedica found that combining curcumin with piperine increased curcumin bioavailability by up to 2,000%. That is the difference between turmeric doing almost nothing and actually reaching the tissue that needs it. Consider David, 68, a retired electrician with type 2 diabetes and progressive foot numbness. He had been adding turmeric to his morning tea for months, with no change. He was not adding black pepper. Once he combined both, his reported burning sensations began decreasing measurably within several weeks. Be completely honest, are you using turmeric without black pepper? Comment pepper below. Because the difference between those two versions of the same habit is the difference between consuming it and absorbing it. The fix: a 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric with a small pinch of black pepper daily, warm water, scrambled eggs, soup. It does not matter. Food level amounts only. If you take warfarin or another anticoagulant, keep intake moderate and check with your physician. With chronic kidney disease, avoid concentrated curcumin supplements and stay at food amounts. Turmeric addresses the inflammatory side of nerve damage, but your nerves also need to be fed through proper signaling, and that requires something most people have never thought about in this context. Number 3 is nutritional yeast. If that sounds unfamiliar, stay with me, because what this food does for the nervous system is something a standard B12 supplement cannot replicate. B12 gets all the attention, but nerve conduction does not depend on B12 alone. It depends on the entire B vitamin family working together. When even 1 or 2 members are missing, nerve function suffers. Regardless of how much B12 you take, B1, thiamine is required for electrical signals to travel efficiently through nerve fibers. B6 is essential for producing neurotransmitters and maintaining the integrity of the nerve sheath. Folate supports cell repair at the DNA level. These are not optional additions to B12. B12. They are co-workers in the same operation. Nutritional yeast comes in flakes or powder with a mild nutty flavor and naturally contains B1, B2, B3, B6, and folate alongside B12 in fortified versions. What separates it from a synthetic B-complex capsule is the food matrix. Whole foods carry cofactors that help the digestive system recognize and use nutrients more effectively. For an aging gut that is already absorbing things less efficiently, that gap shows up in outcomes. A 2016 study published in JAMA Neurology, analyzing data from over 73,000 adults aged 75 and older, found that people with chronically low B vitamin status, particularly B12 and folate, showed significantly higher rates of neurological decline over time. Nutritional yeast offers a whole food route to closing multiple B vitamin gaps at once. Consider Patricia, 76, a retired administrator who had been taking a B12 supplement for 2 years with minimal improvement in hand tingling. She rarely ate meat. Adding 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast daily gave the full B family in a form her digestive system could actually absorb. Within several weeks, she reported clearer sensation returning to her fingertips in the mornings. Be completely honest. Are you relying on a single B12 pill and wondering why nothing has shifted? Comment 1 below, because the single nutrient approach is where most stalls begin. The fix: 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast daily. Sprinkle on popcorn, stir into eggs, mix into soup. If you are already on B12 injections from your physician, keep that protocol. This works alongside it, not instead of it. What comes next quietly undermines everything else on this list, a process that destroys new nerve structure as fast as the body can build it. Number 2 is whole eggs, and the emphasis on whole, yolk included, is not a casual detail. The yolk is exactly where the nerve-relevant nutrition lives. Most people think of eggs as a protein source. Almost nobody connects them to nerve repair. Yet the yolk contains 2 compounds that are structural components of the myelin sheath itself, not supporting players, but actual building material. Choline is a precursor to acetylcholine, the primary neurotransmitter used to transmit signals between nerves and muscles. When choline levels run low, that communication slows. Signals weaken. Most older adults are chronically low in choline, not because they eat poorly, but because it has stayed off the mainstream nutrition radar for decades. It does not appear on most food labels. Physicians rarely test for it. Lecithin, formerly phosphatidylcholine, is a phospholipid that forms the actual cellular membrane of every nerve cell in the body. That membrane is not just a wrapper. It is a functional structure that electrical signals must travel through. When the dietary supply drops, nerve cell membranes become less fluid and more rigid. Signals degrade not because the nerve is severed, but because the wall it has to pass through no longer works as it should. An analysis published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that dietary choline intake below recommended levels was associated with markers of compromised neurological function in adults over 60, with the relationship becoming more pronounced with age. Consider Thomas, 71, a former contractor with progressive grip weakness. He had been eating egg whites only for years. Following old cholesterol guidance he had never updated, reintroducing 2 whole eggs daily was one of the simplest changes in his nutritional approach. Over 3 months, his grip strength stabilized and his morning hand stiffness measurably reduced. Be completely honest. Have you been discarding the yolk for years because of old cholesterol guidance? Comment yolk below. Because for nerve health, the yolk is not the risk. The yolk is the repair material. The fix: 2 whole eggs daily. Choline and lecithin are in the yolk, not in the white. If you have kidney concerns or specific cholesterol guidance from your physician, 1 whole egg with an extra white is a reasonable middle ground. But keep the yolk if at all possible. We have 1 item left, and it is the reason everything else on this list can actually do its job. Number 1 is raw sunflower seeds. Small, inexpensive, available in any grocery store, and almost universally overlooked when it comes to nerve health. Here's the picture most people recognize. You add omega-3s, you take your B vitamins, you eat your eggs, you do the work, and yet the progress is slower than it should be. The reason is oxidative stress, the one factor that can dismantle nerve repair as fast as it is happening. Sunflower seeds are the single richest common food source of vitamin E. 1 ounce provides approximately 7.4 milligrams, close to half the full daily recommended intake from 1 small handful. Vitamin E is a fat-soluble antioxidant. Because myelin is roughly 70% fat, it is one of the most oxidation-vulnerable structures in the human body. Free radicals circulate constantly, and as the body's antioxidant defenses diminish with age, myelin absorbs a disproportionate share of that damage. Vitamin E positions itself inside fatty tissue, including myelin, and neutralizes free radicals before they degrade the nerve sheath. Think of it as a guard posted inside the very structure being rebuilt. Without that protection, the flax seeds can supply the building fats, the turmeric can reduce inflammation, the nutritional yeast can restore signaling, and the eggs can rebuild the membrane. But oxidative stress will tear it down as quickly as it goes up. Vitamin E is what allows the rebuilding to hold. A landmark clinical trial, the Age-Related Eye Disease Study, published in Archives of Ophthalmology, tracking over 3,600 adults for more than 5 years, found that high-dose vitamin E combined with complementary antioxidant nutrients was associated with a 25% reduction in the progression of oxidative tissue damage. The mechanism, vitamin E protecting high-fat tissue from oxidative degradation, applies directly to myelin. Sunflower seeds also contain magnesium for electrical signal regulation along nerve fibers, copper for myelin synthesizing enzymes, and selenium, which amplifies vitamin E's antioxidant function. One food, multiple critical gaps. Consider Eleanor, 69, a retired nurse managing peripheral neuropathy for 4 years. Her symptoms had stabilized but not improved. Adding 1 ounce of raw unsalted sunflower seeds daily, sometimes on a salad, sometimes mixed into oatmeal alongside ground flaxseed, produced the first genuine improvement in her nighttime symptoms in 2 years. A measurable reduction in burning intensity, her neurologist confirmed at her 6-month review. Be completely honest. Have you been doing everything right on paper and still not seeing the results you expected? Comment shield below. Because oxidative protection is the piece most nerve health protocols never include. Without it, everything else works against resistance. The fix: 1 ounce of raw unsalted sunflower seeds daily. One ingredient on the label, nothing else. Flavored or honey roasted versions contain additives that interfere with absorption. Add to a salad, eat as a snack, or combine with your morning ground flaxseed for the fat rebuild and the antioxidant protection in the same meal. Let me give you specific steps you can take starting tonight. First, pick up ground flaxseed at your next grocery run. 1 to 2 tablespoons into your morning meal every day. Keep it refrigerated. Second, add a small pinch of black pepper every time you use turmeric. Without it, you are not absorbing the compound your nerves actually need. Third, add 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast to 1 meal per day. This closes multiple B vitamin gaps with a single inexpensive whole food. Fourth, reintroduce whole eggs if you have been avoiding the yolk. 2 daily provides the choline and lecithin your nerve cell membranes depend on. Fifth, buy 1 small bag of raw unsalted sunflower seeds, 1 ingredient on the label, and eat 1 ounce daily. This is the oxidative shield that allows everything else to work. Sixth, write down your current symptoms tonight and rate each from 1 to 10. Do the same at day 30. Nerve repair does not happen overnight, but the direction of change is measurable if you have a baseline to compare against. And finally, bring this framework to your doctor. Ask specifically, are my B vitamin levels being tested at ranges appropriate for my age? Is my current treatment addressing the underlying repair, or only the symptoms? You deserve a physician who treats you as a thinking adult, who can participate in your own care. Drop a comment right now saying nerves if this gave you something real today. That word tells me you are ready to stop waiting and start giving your nervous system what it actually needs. Think of one specific person you love, a parent, a partner, a close friend who has been living with nerve pain and telling themselves this is just what aging feels like. Send them this video right now, not later, right now, because what they need to know might be sitting in a grocery store they have already walked past 100 times. Subscribe to this channel. The mission is straightforward: honest, research-grounded health information before something has already gone wrong, not after. In the next video, we are going to look at another condition that affects millions of seniors silently before symptoms become undeniable, and the specific patterns that accelerate it without anyone noticing until the damage is already significant. You will not want to miss it. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended as medical advice. Nerve health management must be individualized based on your complete medical history, current health status, and all relevant factors. Never adjust or discontinue any medication without first consulting your healthcare provider. If you have chronic kidney disease, take anticoagulants, or are undergoing chemotherapy, speak with your physician before making any dietary changes. The information presented reflects current published research, but is not a substitute for evaluation by a qualified medical professional.